So Ryan, I'd like to draw up a scenario for you about either not having a will or having a will that's maybe too out of date. Can you quantify fairly simply right now what would constitute a will that is too out of date?
Yeah. Well, and again, as a lawyer, it depends.
Yeah.
But I always recommend to my clients. They always say, okay, so when do I need to check this? When do I need to think about changes? When do I need to review it? Creating good habits is always the best thing to do. And so I personally think the best time to do it is, if nothing else changes in your year of life, do it when you do your tax return. So everybody pretty much does their tax return around the same time of year, every single time.
Yep.
Most people are pretty good at doing them annually. So, rather than do it on like who wants to read their will on a birthday, or, a wedding anniversary or something like that, right? Pick something that you're going to do almost every time at the same time of the year.
Yep.
So taxes is the one that I kind of espouse to. And that way you prepare your taxes with your accountant, and then you take out your will, read it for probably 15 minutes. And then you can reflect to say, yeah, that's still me. That's still my life. That's still, appropriate for us, right?
Right.
I think that's one thing to do on a more of a maintenance perspective. The other thing we always recommend to clients is any sort of major life-changing event, whether it's a life-changing event to you, the person giving the instructions, the testator, or whether it's your beneficiaries. Or key players in the will. So, if you and I know each other really well, and I'm appointing you as my executor when my wife dies, and I've died,
and you've gone,
but we're living along here, and something happens to you, you let me know. Unfortunately, I've got cancer.
Right.
I probably then
I won't be around to process that estate myself.
When I do my review, or on the news of you telling me that about yourself, other than obviously being deeply saddened about that kind of thing, I would want to look out at my will and say, hey, Matt says he'd still do it if he's around, but why do I want to burden him with that? Or now there is a real possibility, if it doesn't go well for Matthew, maybe he's not here, maybe he predeceases me.
Right.
So things like that, you need to consider any change in person's health, any positive or negative changes in your wealth, your asset pool. Wills are typically drafted to, I don't want to say be general, but they're encapsulating. There's a section in a will called a residue. So it's kind of a catch-all section. Okay. So if you haven't put specific instructions in your will and your assets grow significantly, and then you just don't get around to changing your will, it's not going to just disappear into nothing, into the ether. It's going to be covered by the residue. And so as long as that residue, the people that are in the residue of your will are who you would want to have everything at the end of the day, then that'll give you some safeguard. Okay. But any major life-changing event.
So having a baby, buying a bigger house, getting married, getting divorced, these are all the triggers.
Yeah, and so out of those that you indicated, babies, illnesses, increases or decreases in your wealth and your assets, getting separated. So separation should always be accompanied with a separation agreement.
Of course.
So you can have the proper releases of each other's estates if that's what's applicable. Because just because you get separated doesn't mean they don't have a right to your estate. Right? True. You need to make sure you have the separation agreement to speak to that. And then the other thing would be divorce. A lot of people are of the opinion that a divorce automatically voids rights. Again, no, not necessarily. So again, the separation wording is important to have in an agreement. The only time that your will becomes null and void is on a remarriage. If you're with somebody, you get separated and divorced, and then you're single and swinging, and then all of a sudden you find somebody and you get married again. It's upon that remarriage that previous existing will automatically is void. Because at law, the only person in Ontario and Canada that is entitled to a minimum is a legally married spouse.
Okay. So, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.